This is your guide to the OGT or OAA short answers. We're going to focus on 2-point questions. This is a longer presentation, so you may pause or rewind this video as often as needed. Rule number 1, when faced with short answer questions on a test, don't skip the written questions. If you find them overwhelming, just remember URTOPS. We'll go over this strategy to breaking down questions. Its parts include underlining, reading, looking at a topic, organizing your answer, checking for the parts that need to be complete, and supporting your answer. Our first step in URTOPS is to underline. I'll say it once and again and again. It's okay to write on your test booklet. This question is from a reading test. It is based on a longer passage. If this were the question in front of you on a test, grab your pencil and in the test booklet, start underlining key words and phrases in your question. I'll mark some here just like you would on the test. So as I read the question, identify one example of persuasion the author uses in paragraph 4. Then explain how the author uses this example of persuasion to support the Williams cause. Why did I select these words? Let's take a closer look. I chose the word identify because it tells us what we need to do. I chose the word example or one example because this tells us how many things we need to identify. I chose the word explain because this is something else we need to do. The word persuasion is important because it tells us what type of thing we need to identify and explain. And I also underlined support because this tells us why. All of these key words are words that we're going to focus on to help us answer the question. Words like identify and explain are known as performance verbs. Performance verbs are key words that tell you how you need to answer the question or the prompt. Once we underline, it's time to read. In this case, we're going to read and reread the question to make sure we understand what it is asking. You may have to read it 2, 3, or even 4 times to get a good understanding. Also, read over any parts of the passage, in this case, or an image, which is sometimes found on science and social studies tests, that may go with the question. Again, it's okay to write on your test booklet. Mark down key words in the passage that you think might help with your answer. Our next step is the topic. This is where we choose a topic sentence that states our position, states our decision, or starts our answer. Now, if you're stuck, it's okay to rephrase the question. Here's a tip. Write down in the margin before you write in your answer booklet. Now, trust me, there's going to be plenty of room on your test booklet to write down or sketch out your topic. Here is one way to write your topic for this response. Now, please bear with me as I write on the computer. Our response starts out, identify one example of persuasion. We can rephrase that and say, one example of persuasion is, I'm going to leave that blank because this is our topic sentence, our start for our prompt. Again, it's okay to write this on your test booklet. Our next step is to organize. This is where you put your thoughts for your response in order. Think of it like an outline. Now, I know this is only a 2-point question, so there are usually just 2 parts to organize, but this is a good habit to get into when answering questions. Start to phrase your response just as you would in the answer booklet. Remember to use the space in your test booklet to help you organize your information. So for this example, we could put down one example is, and two, it supports the cause by. Now, for time and space, I've abbreviated here, but you can go into more detail on the test. Remember, in your answer, you need to be clear, you need to be concise, and you need to be to the point. After organizing, we look for specific parts in our question that need to be answered. Since this is a 2-point question, we can look for 2 things to include. Remember to look at those performance verbs. You can label these items in your test book. You may want to make a checklist or label the passage in your test booklet. So if this test were in front of you, it may look like this. Here's the first thing we need to include, and this is the second thing we need to include. Once you've included your response to this part in your answer, check off the item. Our second rule with short answer questions, write a response. Just like our first rule, don't skip. In this one, write some type of response. Take the info from URTOPS and put it together into a legible response. Remember to be clear, concise, and to the point. Remember to include what the question is asking for. And also, if your writing can't be read, it can't be scored. You may print or use cursive. Next, we'll take a look at some example answers. This is an example of a 1-point response to the same question we've been using in this presentation. Now, it may be a bit hard to read. It's copied from an actual answer. Now, this response got 1 point because it did list an example of persuasion. However, the why part of the question was not answered. So if you find yourself in this situation where you only know part of the answer, go ahead and include the part you know. It's a way to earn maybe not full credit, but at least partial credit for the answer. This is an example of a response that scored 0 points. From the response, we can see the person wrote down, one example of persuasion is the birds are dying in large amounts of numbers and that something needs to be done about this. This is a fact. It's not an example of persuasion because it's not directly used by the author to sway the reader's opinion. Remember, use URTOPS to stick to the question. Here is an example of a 2-point response. This is a 2-point response because it gives a correct example of persuasion, and it also gives us a reason why the author uses this example. So the next time you are faced with short answer responses on a test, just remember, you are tops.